Good afternoon, folks. Today's presentation talks about mental health and the connection of cannabis. So we're going to go through that for A. So please join me for discussion A. Okay, here we go. The call always comes late. Psychosis rarely announces itself at noon on a Tuesday. It arrives at 2 a.m. when a mother is standing barefoot in her kitchen, clutching her phone, whispering that her son is saying things that make no sense. He hasn't slept in 3 days. He's pacing. He's terrified. And now she is too. I have been on the receiving end of those calls more times than I can count. The details change, but the pattern doesn't. A young person, bright, funny, full of promise, suddenly unravels. And somewhere in the story, often quietly, often reluctantly, cannabis appears. Not the occasional joint, not the once a month edible, but daily use. High potency THC vaping, concentrates, gummies that look like candy but hit like a freight train. This is part of this is part this is the part of cannabis conversation America refuses to have. The moment the world tilts. One mother told me her son walked into her bedroom at dawn, convinced the neighbors were transmitting messages through the walls. Another described her daughter sitting on the floor, rocking, whispering that her thoughts were being stolen. A father recounted how his son barricaded himself in the basement, certain someone was coming for him. These are not rare stories. They are simply unspoken ones. And when I ask gently, because you must ask gently about cannabis, the answer is almost always the same. Yes, he uses. Yes, it's daily. Yes, it's the. Give me 1 second, folks. It's the high potency stuff. No, we didn't think it could do this. The science is not abstract. When you've seen the faces, we talk about cannabis and psychosis as if it's an ancient or if it's as if it as if it's an academic debate, as if the decades of research showing a a 2 to 4 fold increase in psychotic disorders with daily high potency use are still up in the negotiation, as if adolescents whose brains are still whirling themselves, they somehow immune to they are somehow immune to the neurochemical chaos THC can unleash. But when you've sat with a family in the emergency department at 3 a.m. watching their child try to make sense of a world that has suddenly turned hostile, the science is not abstract. It is heartbreakingly concrete. The cannabis of today is not the cannabis of yesterday. People imagine the cannabis of the 1970s, mild, mellow, low THC. What they don't see is the modern industry's potency alarms race or arms race. Flower at 25%. THC vape THC vape cartridges at 80%. Concentrates pushing 90%. We have created products capable of destabilizing vulnerable brains and then marketed them with pastel packaging and fruit flavored names. The science is not accidental, it is profitable. Dispensaries do not warn young people about psychosis. Why would they? The industry is booming. THC is common. Oh, comedy vulnerable. Adolescents are a market segment, but clinicians see the fallout. Parents see the fallout. Emergency departments see the fallout. And still, public messaging remains stuck in a false binary. Either cannabis is harmless or you're a fear monger. Legislation without truth is not process. legislation could have been paired with guardrails, warnings about psychosis risk, limits on potency, education campaigns aimed at teens, training for clinicians, clear messaging that cannabis is not binging, benign for everyone. Instead, we built an industry and called it policy. A story we can change. I think often about one young man I met during the first psychotic episode. He was terrified, trapped in a mind that no longer felt like his own. His mother sat beside him, holding his hand, whispering that she loved him and that he was safe, that they would get through this. She asked me later why didn't anyone tell us cannabis could do this? It is a question I cannot answer without indicting, inciting in, indi- indicting our collective silence. We owe young people the truth. Cannabis, cannabis legislation is here to stay, but honesty must be part of the deal. Not moralizing, not exaggeration, just truth. High potency, frequent early cannabis use can trigger psychosis in vulnerable individuals. If we can prevent even a fraction of these crises by speaking plainly, then then science is not neutrality, it is harm. The crisis is preventable. The question is whether we will prevent it. Psychosis steals futures. It fractures families. It reshapes lives. And too often, it is preceded by a substance we have decided to treat like wellness supplements. We can do better. We can tell the truth. We can build guardrails. We can protect young people before the 2 a.m. phone call comes. Because once you've heard that call, you never forget it. Okay, guys, that's your A for today. I will be back on with B shortly. Give me a few minutes for a little break, and I'll be back on with you. For now, Gator Wellness, take care, folks.